Welcome to the Crazy Wisdom Podcast. I've got Naman Mishra here, and he is the CTO of Repel AI. Very interesting. It's so funny because I've just noticed that nobody talks about security. It's such an
Mhm.
important thing, and I'm so glad that you're here to kind of demystify what is going on with security. Welcome to the show.
Thank you, Stewart. Thank you so much for having me.
So it feels like there's two separate worlds of security within LLMs. There's one, the basic, just the usage of LLMs, prompt
Mhm.
injection, getting them to do
Yeah.
things that they're not trained to do and all these different things. So far, it doesn't
Mhm.
seem like there's been a huge amount of, maybe I just haven't heard of them, but people kind of getting screwed over by these types of things. Like there's a lot in the beginning, but you don't hear that too much about prompt injection. I do know that Claude sort of did some things to help their prompt injection. But then there's the
Yeah.
other part of security, which seems like you guys might be doing with Rapello, which is like now you're building this machine learning app. There are all these sort of traditional cybersecurity things that have to do with computation that have been problems and it is also a mysterious world for me. Um,
Yeah.
and so those are the two worlds. Is that right, or are there other worlds that I should be aware of?
So, a good framework for thinking about LLM security and specifically GenAI security is you can break it down into maybe three parts.
Hmm.
So, one would be your model layer. So, model providers like OpenAI, Anthropic, right, Gemini. So, all of these people who are building large language models of their own across modalities, right? One is your data layer or the infra layer, I would say, which is like preparing data for these things or maybe putting these models out to production, right? And then there's the application layer where um, models and all of these infra and the code, the wrappers come together to build an application, which is at the end of the day consumed by the end user, right? Now, all these three layers have different kind of vulnerabilities,
Mhm.
risks, and different threats associated with them. And they have different stakeholders. Like, let's suppose you are a company who has to build a Gen AI application, and you are using something like an Azure OpenAI, right? You you shouldn't ideally need to worry about, okay, if this model is maybe safe or not, right? There's another differentiation between safety and security. We'll come to that later. But like in simpler terms, if the model hallucinates a lot or not, are there any inherent biases in them? These are some situations which we saw a lot with ChatGPT in its early days, right? Where it would just utter anything or be biased in its responses, right? So you shouldn't ideally have to worry about these things because OpenAI, Anthropic, as you just mentioned, with constitutional classifiers, they had their paper recently. They have been working a lot in terms of AI safety, right? Now, but when you take these models or you pick out open source models and fine tune them on your data, in that case the burden of safety falls upon you because okay, Llama has done a lot of safety training, or maybe DeepSeek have done their share of safety training, but when you're pushing things to production, it at the end of the day falls upon you
Whoa.
that using an open source model, so you should ensure that it's safe, right? So that is something that you can categorize as in the model layer. Now when we talk about application layer, you've taken that model and you've built a wrapper around it. You've
Yeah.
built an application around it. You're building chatbots, you're building co-pilots, building agents. You are giving autonomy to the app to take actions and make decisions on your behalf, right? And the engine at the core of it is an LLM, which is
Yeah.
undeterministic in nature, right? You
Yeah.
never know what's going to come out of it, right? And now when you give it more and more autonomy, the threat surface area that exists just increases exponentially. So you are giving it access to make API calls on your behalf, or maybe add things to your database, right? That's where the security part of it comes into the picture, and that's where some security threats lie.
Brilliant. Okay, that was an excellent
Hmm.
wrap up. Kind of gave me the keys into the different things. When you're using the application layer and you're calling an API, I imagine
Mhm.
that all the API providers provide a fair amount of security. Is that accurate in terms of their API, or are there a lot of security holes with just having, I'll just give an example, and for my listeners who aren't technical, like I've been building ChatGPT wrappers, the
Mhm.
application layer, and
Yeah.
all I do is I store the API key in the environment, the
Mhm.
environmental thing, and as long as I do that, I feel like I'm secure. How
Mhm.
secure should I actually feel?
So that again comes down to what is the use case and what sort of autonomy you are giving to the application.
Yeah,
If
interesting.
it's like a simple summarization application or a simple RAG chatbot, you don't have much to worry about, right? But let's suppose you are a company in the financial sector, right?
Yeah, got
Or
it.
in the healthcare
Cool.
domain,
Brilliant.
right? Where the customer data is like very, very crucial, right? In that case, you can't really bet on any data leakages because that would result in like huge reputational damages, maybe even legal and monetary losses, right? So in those cases, you have to follow certain methods. The first of all, as you said, is security by design, which is like following proper steps, making sure your environment variables are safe, right? Another example can be like having limits on the data that the language LLM has access to, right? So you have to make sure that if you are building a RAG and it's accessible to everyone, or any general user can come and use your RAG, you should definitely make sure that the data that you're feeding to it should not have any proprietary information or any PII, right? In
Hmm.
any case, because that's a direct data leakage. And now with LLMs, it's like easier than ever, right? You just ask it and it spits out, right? It was with ChatGPT. Some people figured out that when you ask it for Windows activation keys, it was spitting keys that actually worked, right? And that is something that happens even with GitHub
Wait,
tokens and
wait,
stuff.
can you go into that example? What do you mean by that?
Yeah, so I think it was early days of GPT-4, and this was before GPT-4 Turbo. And OpenAI had just released GPT-4, and some people, what they did was asked it to spit some private keys of MS Microsoft Windows activation keys, and it actually started giving out keys that actually worked. So the data that had been fed into the model while training uh,
Wow,
consisted of actual keys which were active at that time, and it was made accessible to users who were just like prompting it and getting it out of it. So that highlights the importance of like data cleaning and preparing data in a proper way when you're pre-training a language model. So
that's
yeah, so
interesting. How do
like do
you, is that what you guys are going to focus on too? Is like helping the foundational models think about training data? Is that something that that
that is something that is very important, and we believe at least the model providers, the closed source model providers, OpenAI, Claude,
yeah,
Gemini, are taking good care of it because obviously it's directly linked to their brand reputation, right? Because if
yeah,
like
interesting.
the battle that happened with OpenAI, this activation keys being leaked, or the one that happened with Gemini image model, where it was when it
Yeah,
was asked to generate like images of forefathers of America, it was generating some racial images, right?
yeah.
So these sort of things like impact not only the reputation but also the stock prices and everything in a huge way.
But it's the
So
open source. That's the issue, right? That's where it's not secure.
exactly. Exactly.
Yeah,
And even with the closed source providers, when you're building an application, okay, the closed source provider has done what they can do from a safety point of view. But now let's suppose you are building an application and you have like left some door open in some way that a user one can access a data of user two. So this is something that we did in one of our and this is where we come in. We come in on the application layer. So we want
got
to
it.
make sure that when you are building any Gen AI application based on any model, we want to make sure that your application, the thing that finally goes into the hand of the user, is safe and secure. So we do red teaming of your applications. Uh,
Very
and
cool.
red teaming, for those who don't know, is essentially trying to break those applications from a hacker's point of view and figuring out where the vulnerabilities or the gaps lie so that we can help you fix that, mitigate that, so that you can take your app to production more confidently, right? So this is what we do. And in the
Cool.
application layer, a lot of threats exist even after uh, using like maybe Azure OpenAI or Gemini or Anthropic's API keys. Still, a lot of things can go wrong in the application layer, and that is something that we work on.
Yeah, that's really cool. So focusing on the application layer, what are the specific use cases? You mentioned finance, and
Yeah,
finance is really interesting. As a sort of first guess, it would also be medical, probably is an important one. That it
healthcare is a huge
healthcare.
market.
Yeah, yeah. So finance, healthcare, legal. Is that a market?
Yeah, yeah, spot on. Legal is very crucial
Yeah.
when it comes to safety and security.
And now, are you focusing on the We can talk more about the business angle from now, and go back to the technical layer as well. But are you focusing more on the U.S., on India? Which are the markets, or both? I mean, global.
So we are a US-based company with an office in India.
Mm,
So right now I'm joining from Bangalore, India. My co-founder Aryaman, he's in SF right now. So the business end of things mostly takes place in SF, and the tech and the building part of it takes place in India. So I have like the tech team established here in Bangalore,
very cool.
but sales and GTM motion is being carried out in SF.
Uh,
And
yeah, go for it.
from a from a customer point of view, we started off with Indian companies. We now work with the some of the largest companies in India, and now our focus is purely US GTM. So we'll be moving towards that.
Yeah. And it's so interesting because no one else is talking about it, and I don't know why no one else is talking about it, and everybody's just talking about meme coins and all these other things. Uh,
Yeah,
I mean, well, it must not seem like that from your world, right? It must seem like a lot of people are talking about it.
yeah, of course.
Yeah.
From my world, it's like a new company coming in the space like every week or so.
Okay.
So
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's something companies are talking about, something big companies probably are talking about. It's not something that people in my world of sort of indie developers,
Mhm.
people are talking about. But it's not even something that the foundational models talk about. Because I do pay attention to a lot of what they talk about.
Mhm.
Claude did make an announcement about 2 to 3 weeks ago saying that they had
Yeah.
done something. Are you familiar with that announcement?
I am.
Yeah.
So
What
what
did
they
they do? Yeah.
actually Yeah, so what they essentially did was they worked with a couple of companies in the space and prepared a sort of method, or I would say some framework using which they could enhance the safety of their chatbots, right? So they called it constitutional classifiers. They released a big paper on it. I did get a chance to go through that like very briefly,
Uh,
but what they did after that was they first, they put out a challenge on HackerOne, which is a platform where you basically put out security challenges and ask ethical hackers to come and sort of
cool.
exploit your app, and you give bounties in return. So that is
Yeah, how
something
did
that
sorry, we'll come back to the Constitution classifiers, but I want to understand how the ethical hacker thing works because aren't they giving away their security flaws and then telling the unethical hackers to come to it?
So this is all of this is done in two ways. So first is when you have not taken that particular application to production yet, you have not made it available for the general public. So it's still in a controlled and a staging environment. And then
Cool.
you ask people to come and try and hack it. So that is one. Another is like your app has been out there for maybe years, but there still might be something that no one has figured out yet, right? And of course, it won't be as big as a new app, but you never know, right? There still might be some memory leak or something that can cause a huge cascading effect, right? And you just trust these hackers
Hmm.
to like tell you, and the bounty amounts are pretty good. So like they range anywhere from like $500 to even go in tens of thousands of dollars.
Interesting.
So yeah.
That's so cool that
So
they figured out a way to do that. But yeah, go into what the Claude did with the Constitution class.
yeah, so they essentially made this challenge available on HackerOne first, and they had this whole process of hackers trying to do this to get past levels. They had eight
Uh,
levels
uh,
there, and once they figured out, okay, not a lot of people are able to get through these eight, they made it available as a challenge to public. And there were quite a few folks. It was live for, I guess, just over a week. Even I tried it. I was able to get through some half the levels,
wow.
but yeah, they had a bounty at the end, and a couple of different challenges that, okay, if you figure out one single prompt that covers that passes all the eight levels, then we'll give you some. It was good amount of money. I don't remember the exact amount. So yeah, they had opened it as a challenge, and now it's closed. So they got the things that they needed. They got the adversarial data that they wanted to collect, and now they'll use that in further strengthening the security and safety of their Claude application.
Brilliant. Let's talk about agents. Have you been playing around with agents? What are this? Yeah, and this is what I wanted to talk to you about as well, is that I've now downloaded What Could Go Wrong, WCGW, on my
Mhm.
Claude desktop instance. And I'm
Mhm.
just letting it kind of run through my computer. I feel like I'm doing it in a way that's not exactly safe by keeping it very, very highly scoped. But I
Yeah,
don't think that I share that conscientiousness with the general population, and that I think it's a very dangerous tool. Like, but dangerous in the probabilistic sense. It doesn't feel
yeah,
like it's going to go and purposefully destroy my machine. Although I think
yeah,
third-party apps that Claude could work with Claude MCP
yeah,
servers might be do that type of stuff. But can you
yeah.
talk about just either Claude MCP servers or just in general the state of agents?
Yeah, so specifically, agents is again the things that we talked about earlier, right? An LLM which has been given some sort of autonomy to take actions on your behalf, and
Yeah,
that's where the threat lies.
yeah,
When you talk about Claude's computer use or OpenAI's operator, right? When you give these application access to your let's say emails and calendars and maybe your private files, there's always some sort of threat associated with it. uh,
uh,
I'm not sure if this is something that even Claude or OpenAI are considering it, like is if it's something that's top priority for them right now, because right now they're in building phase. Not a lot
yeah,
of people care about security when they're building, right?
yeah.
But already there are examples of like people exploiting the Claude's computer use for doing different sorts of attacks. Same with operators. So I'll just give an example. There's this thing called indirect prompt injection. So we all know about direct prompt injections, right? You just type
Indirect.
something, craft a malicious prompt, you type something in the chatbot, it spits something, right? Now, let's suppose that same prompt or some maliciously crafted prompt is maybe injected in an email you receive, right? Or
Yeah.
in a calendar invite you receive, or maybe just some document someone sent you, right? And you casually ask the operator or the agent to, yeah, just read it for me or do this for me. And when it goes through the content, so the content doesn't even need to be specifically typed out. It can be something that is hidden in white font, not even readable to human eye. But of course, when you pass it through an LLM, it will read it. And let's suppose if it reads it and there's some malicious prompt injection there and it acts upon it, the outcome can be totally disastrous. So we worked with a couple of customers which were using agents, and what we were essentially able to do through this indirect prompt injection was we could execute a reverse shell code in their system so that we got the access of their system, right? Like just like a hacker would, right? So this was as close to as I would say stereotypical hacking would go, as far as stereotypical hacking would go, like gaining access of another system, right? And that
Whoa,
was all done just because the subject asked the agent to summarize an email. That's it,
whoa,
right?
that feels big. Like, and that just
Yeah.
that reminds me of just in general how like that's not a problem with just prompt injection. That's a problem with in if I click on a link and it's just
Yeah,
it sends me a link and I click on the
yeah,
link, like it can gain access to my computer, right? That's all that's necessary.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So even in this case it was like summarizing a link, but let's suppose it's a phishing email. When
Yeah.
you're reading it as a human, you know that come on, it's a phishing email, who you're trying to fool,
Oh,
right?
whoa.
But the LLM doesn't know that. What if it just goes ahead and clicks that link and something happens, right? You never know. So it's another attack surface opening up for malicious actors to exploit.
That's crazy. It just reminds me of why when I talk to cybersecurity people that they're so paranoid. Just because it's so like the internet is not a secure medium, and now we're adding another non-secure medium onto that insecure medium. So let's actually talk about that. Let's go back to the internet
Mhm.
insecure medium.
Yeah.
Is it the main thing to worry about is just clicking on links, or is it are there a whole bunch of ways? Like if somebody wants to get access to your machine, they're going to get access to your machine. That's the
Yeah.
reality, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And so what
So,
do yeah, yeah, go for it.
yeah, so security has always been and will always be a cat and mouse game.
Mm,
So there are people who want to break into, and then there are people who are trying to defend.
yeah.
The only difference is that the people who are trying to break into need just one door to break into, and the people who are trying to defend need to
Whoa.
lock each and every single possible door. They have to imagine what door can exist and go and lock that too. So it's like it's always a cat and mouse game. And when it comes to AI security, the reason that people should think about this a lot more is because, okay, let's suppose you are a cybersecurity professional and maybe you are an ethical hacker or maybe an unethical hacker, right? You still need to have like a lot of core knowledge about the subject. You need to know a lot about computer
Oh,
architecture and
yeah.
systems and APIs and everything, right? With AI, and specifically with LLMs, you don't necessarily need to know about all of that stuff, right? It's just how, because most of the interfaces are just like prompting based, you just need to know to craft the right prompt. And if the systems are not in place, if the security by design has not been followed, if the guardrails have not been implemented, maybe you can cause quite a havoc, right? So the the thing that has changed with LLM security is the it has become very easy for adversaries to like cause trouble, right? Because all of these vulnerabilities are most of these vulnerabilities, especially in applications that have not been thoroughly red teamed, these vulnerabilities are very low hanging fruit. So you don't essentially need an expert hacker to come in and hack it. Even someone just with a like a sort of slightly malicious intention is also able to do this. So the bar has dropped down quite a bit.
Yeah, and
And the
that's
thing,
yeah, go for it. Go for it.
yeah, and why people are not, I would say, sort of worried about this is just because they are more concerned with the speed of shipping, right?
Yeah.
I always believe that security and usability, especially in AI, are always going to be trade-offs, right? So if you increase the security, usability is going to take a hit. If you increase the usability, give it maximum autonomy, of course, security will be in shambles. So S- excuse me, so that's the main thing. A lot of people are more concerned about taking things to production, showing that okay, we have this cool new AI feature with us, uh, so much so that they are not maybe focusing on security that much as they would have if they were shipping it at regular pace.
Yeah, that's a very interesting point because it's right. You know, it like the Facebook sort of mantra, move fast and break things. In some ways, it's
Exactly.
the only way to build a company. If you're playing the venture game, if you're raising money and you're building a company for thousands of or millions of billions of consumers in Facebook's
Yeah. Yeah.
case, or if you're starting the next Oracle like that
Hmm.
like the speed by which you build things is an absolute necessity.
Yeah.
But it must be empowering the defenders as well. And I know this for a fact because the whole reason I reached out to you is because a friend of mine, he's in cybersecurity. He's not in AI cybersecurity, but he's
Yeah.
constantly telling me like, bro, this thing is gonna, it's just like a genie in a bottle. Like this thing is a big problem. It's gonna cause a lot of problems. And this is, I mean, in general, it's like, it's just he's right, and there's nothing we can really do about it at a larger level. Like
Yeah.
it's just like it's like the internet. It's just here. I loved what you're talking about doors and opening
Mhm.
up doors because that is, it made me think about a castle. And the whole
Yeah.
reason that you create the castle is because you're guarding things in the castle, or you're trying to guard the land around the castle. And it's like everyone was doing it back in the day when you had to have a castle in order to protect everything. But we live in that morphed into the industrial age, where the industrial age was all about a nation with a border and factories and
Hmm.
and things. And
Yeah.
it's like the whole like all the way into that, like how do you actually protect a nation? And now we're in
Exactly.
the information age, where the information age is like it's all on the internet, and it's not protectable. You don't have a castle. It's like
Yeah.
yeah. What do you anything interesting you thought of there?
Yeah, that's a great analogy. And the thing with I would say people can do here, and even from a defense side of things, uh, you got, man, you gotta keep that castle main door locked. You
Yeah.
can't just leave it open and welcome your enemies inside, right? So, if I translate this into AI development, AI application development life cycle, it's like having basic security by design in place, following the basic principles of input output content
What
filtering
is input output?
and sorry.
What is input output?
So the stuff that's going into the LLM model and the stuff that's going out to the consumer, right? If you have a consumer interacting with the
Yeah.
application,
Yeah.
what is the stuff that's coming in? What's the stuff that going out? Is there something malicious and harmful in that? If that, block it. If
Uh,
not, let it come. But if is the output that's going out, does it contain something that should not go out? Maybe something that should not be said, or some information that is very critical or private, it should not go out. So having guardrails for that, and
is that
just
through
like
JSON? How do you do guardrails through that?
so, the in my honest opinion, nobody knows how to solve the problem for guardrails because I bet every guardrail that has been developed till now can be broken, and we do that on a daily basis. It doesn't matter if it's Amazon Bedrock, if it's guardrails by Azure,
Oh,
or if
interesting. Because they were all trying to build guardrails.
exactly. And there are a lot of private players, a lot of security companies, security companies who are coming up with guardrails as well, right? But guardrails are very important. Of course, they're very important, but they are meant to keep the
Average.
low
Yeah.
hanging
Yeah.
fruits
Yeah.
protected, right?
Yeah.
So that let's suppose anyone can not just come and craft a simple malicious prompt and boom, it's chaos, right? So for that, you need to have guardrails in place. That's absolutely a no-brainer. But will it protect you 100% or maybe even 80%? I'm not so sure, right?
Yeah.
But this is something that you have to
The
do.
edge
Let's
cases.
suppose edge cases, exactly. Edge cases always exist, but you need to. That's the thing, right? You need to close as many doors as possible, uh, for you to do, or of how much it makes sense for you to do, right?
So you were saying input output, and then you were going to continue. I'm really glad that we went down that little pathway. But what are
Yeah.
besides input output? What are the other
Yeah.
things to consider?
Input output is one thing, then having proper role based access control. It is nothing new. Role based access
Mhm.
control has been a concept ever since cybersecurity is being talked about, right? But you'd be surprised to know in how many AI application it's actually in place, right? Or privilege escalation, which is lingo that we use in AI security. It's very common. People are being aware of it these days and taking steps to protect against it. But yeah, this is something that happens very frequently. And let's suppose you are using some open source model and you're fine tuning it to your specific use case. You have to make sure that the data you're fine tuning it with is clean, it's not poisoned, it doesn't have some
Oh,
private information which
wait, oh,
can
wait,
then
wait, wait. That sounds like a really big loophole as well.
yeah,
Security risk is the data with which you fine tune a model. Um,
exactly.
and somebody recently we at our AI Whisperers event in Buenos Aires last night, somebody was talking
Mhm.
about fine tuning. And my
Mhm.
understanding of fine tuning is that it was something that was used a lot in the beginning by the big companies, and then they realized that it didn't really do what they wanted to do exactly. But this person yesterday kind of challenged me on that. What's your take on
Mhm.
fine tuning? Is it something that's real, like that companies actually find value in and doing themselves? And replicate is fine tuning, right?
Hmm. So I'm not, it depends like very use case to use case.
Yeah,
So let's suppose I know this healthcare company who spent like 2 years uh, gathering real transcripts of doctor and patient conversation,
yeah.
and then they fine-tuned their model, their healthcare AI model, LLM, on that data. And now that is their moat, and they are doing brilliantly. They have like millions
Oh,
of users, right? But at the same time, if you're doing something very similar, very simple, where data might not be the mode, right? You don't necessarily need fine tuning, because
got it.
if you
Yeah.
talk about it, like Gemini 2.0 Flash has a context length of what, 2 million tokens. That's a lot of data, right? If not that, you always have RAG applications, right? And there's a lot of work being done in RAG, retrieval augmented generation. So it actually depends upon the use case and the data that you have,
Yeah.
that whether you should go for fine tuning or not.
Yep. Yep. Okay, that's a really
Yeah.
good answer. I like that. And I cut you off again because we were going down. I wanted to get that, but so we were going input output. We've
Yeah.
got data training. What are the other
Yeah.
security leaks?
Yeah. So role-based access control was one. Data
That's
training, making sure that the data is clean and uh, the model is as good as the data. Every AI engineer you would ask would say it. Every ML researcher would say is the model is as good as the data that you feed into it. So it's very important that the data is unbiased. Not always from a security point of view, even from a performance point of view. It's very important that your data is regulated so that there are no inherent biases in the data,
mm,
and there's factually correct information. So
mm.
that a lot of things to do with data fall into safety side of things, but also you have to make sure that there are no credit card info in the data that you're feeding in the model, so that it can lead to someone, right? So from a security point of view, it's also very critical, right?
How
And
do
then when it comes to agents, right?
yeah, yeah.
Uh, Having the basic checks of API security, right? As you said, that don't provide it with environment variables, keep it separate, right? That's a basic thing that people can do, but still they might or might not do it. Limit the scope of it. Another very important and very interesting attack that we found out was denial of wallet, where what the adversary tries to do is essentially try the model or the application to generate so many tokens in output that it costs a lot to the company, right? So let's suppose you are maybe uh, building, and this is something that happened with Amazon's chatbot. People were using it to write code, right? And it was using, maybe I don't know which model internally, but they basically got GPT for free, right? They're not paying for anything. It's Amazon's model, which is Amazon's chatbot, which is live on their application, meant for customer support, meant to help
Uh,
with refunds and stuff like that. But people are using it to write code. So the inference cost is something that the company has to pay, and there are cases where people have been able to generate like maybe millions of tokens out of one response just because there was no token limit set, right? And that ended up just inflating the OpenAI bills, right? So
yeah.
that is
Uh,
also very interesting. That.
So what's your take on DeepSeek in terms of the uh just like uh
Mhm.
like the ability to do state type of stuff, like the Chinese government. How are there any like the indirect prompt injection? It's so hard to answer, right? Because the statecraft the is so crazy because it's like a nation state that has all of the nation states kind of resources behind it. But what's your take on that, if you feel comfortable sharing?
Yeah, so it all depends. It all comes down to the data that was used to train it, right?
Yeah,
If let's say DeepSeek is refusing to answer, or let's say if it's answering something that is controversial, that's just because how it's trained to answer, right? Willingly or unwillingly, right? Uh, just as an example, about there's this state in India, and I'm not trying to be political here or
yeah,
anything. I'm just quoting an example which I've seen on Twitter that there's this state in India called Arunachal Pradesh,
yeah,
and the Chinese government has been like claiming that they they own a part of it,
yeah,
and it's not a part of India, it's part of China.
yeah,
And this is something that's controversial, right? And when you ask about it to DeepSeek, it just plain refuses to answer. Whereas, as per international knowledge, it should clearly say that no, Arunachal Pradesh is a part of India. If you go to ChatGPT or Claude or Gemini, that's what they would say, but not DeepSeek. So
yeah,
that clearly indicates a difference in the type of data that has been used to train it. What were the inherent biases in the data involved, right? And even when you talk about the basic safety benchmarking of DeepSeek versus other models, DeepSeek is not there. And a big reason for that is we all know they trained it on a sort of constrained budget, like
yeah,
very minimal budget, multiple times less than what OpenAI trains its models on. And safety alignment is a sort of post-training process that takes a lot of time and a lot of money. And of course, I don't think so. DeepSeek invested a lot in that. So that's where it stands. And people who are trying to use it uh, will have to deal with these consequences. I'm not saying it's good or bad. It's something that's just there.
yeah. Yeah, and
Yeah.
that's the indirect. I'm gonna go. I feel like that indirect prompt injection feels relevant in terms of the national security question for the United States and people using it. It's funny. I was having a debate with my dad, who
Mhm.
believed that the CCP did not know about DeepSeek being trained, and that probably doesn't have anything to do with it. And I
Mm.
would disagree with him. I think that they probably were aware of it because I don't think China lets things like that happen without their awareness. Um,
Yeah, that is possible, and this is not first-hand knowledge. It's just from what I've seen
yeah,
and what I've read on Twitter or X that a lot of government bodies in China have started using DeepSeek.
yeah.
So so there
Yeah,
seems to be
interesting.
something, but you
Yeah,
never know.
interesting. Yeah, if the CCP wasn't involved, they're probably
Yeah,
involved now very much.
yeah,
I wanted to save a little time to talk about Bangalore and to talk about India in general in terms of tech because as we mentioned before the show, I used to live in Chandigarh.
yeah.
I'm familiar with the Indian tech scene and I was so excited about it back then. And
Mhm.
I think the excitement that I have has now come to fruition, but I haven't been paying attention to it for a long time.
Yeah.
Yeah, what's going on in India? What's going on in Bangalore? Give us a rundown on the state of technology in India.
Yeah, so I would say Bangalore is like one of the most interesting places to be in India if you're a techie or someone who loves tech, because just like Silicon Valley and San Francisco is the forefront of all the innovations being happening
Yeah,
in the US, right? If not all, most of it. The same thing is with India.
yeah,
In India, there are certain centers of innovation, if I can say so. So Bangalore is one of them and the biggest. It's called the Silicon Valley of India for a reason.
yeah,
And then there's Pune, there's Gurgaon, right? So
But it's
so
really
yeah,
Bangalore. Bangalore it became the
yeah,
Silicon
Bangalore is
Valley.
where the majority of things are happening, right? We've got some great talent, some awesome folks, both in tech and non-tech, who are working here, building companies out of their own. So I've been to San Francisco a couple of times. I've lived there for like a couple of months, and yeah, I would say the energy and the overall entrepreneurial vibe is, of course, much more in San Francisco. But I would say India will and Bangalore will get there sooner or later. It's inevitable, just because the excitement that people have here and the kind of talent that we have here, it's gonna go there. And one interesting debate that has been happening in India right now is whether India. So you're seeing all these foundational models being built out of US, out of
Yeah,
Europe,
interesting.
Mistral from Europe. Now there's China. So a lot of people have been talking about that. Okay, when will one come from India? So there's a school of thought that says that no, we should not focus on building foundational LLMs because it takes a lot of investment. Our energy would be better spent focusing on how we can utilize these models to like use it for us, for our country, for our use cases, right? So that's one school of thought. The other school of thought goes like, no, but like
National
if we
security.
don't have models of our own, we so it's all about sovereignty, right?
Yeah,
we
yeah,
we need
yeah,
to we need to own the data, we need to own the sort of IP
yeah.
in some form. So let's suppose there are sanctions in future. You never know
Exactly.
what's the
Exactly.
world geopolitics going to turn out like. So we should be self-sufficient when it comes to AI as well, right? So there's a lot of interesting debate happening in both areas. I'm mostly inclined towards the latter, that
Yeah.
okay, we should be building because we have the talent. We might not have the capital just yet, but with DeepSeek we saw that okay, even with less capital it is possible to some extent, right?
But
So it's about innovation.
yeah, but
Yeah,
I mean, India now has been like you said, you guys got customers from India. I imagine
yeah,
the Indian domestic situation, like companies are growing. India's been growing for the past 10 years, right? Like it's not,
yeah.
and then the government is the government supporting innovation because Silicon Valley, like there's no way that Silicon Valley would have been the way it was without the direct support of the US government in big science.
Yeah.
Isn't India doing the same thing?
Yeah, and definitely, like there has been a humongous amount of support from the government towards uh, inculcating this culture of startups.
Yeah.
So we now have a National Startup Day as a designated day to celebrate the spirit of entrepreneurship in India, right? And the government is like giving out funding for startups across tier one cities, tier two cities, even in villages, if someone wants to start something of their own. So governments is promoting it. The the entrepreneurship. So just like you see in US, right? The government and the uh, people who have built these companies like Mark Zuckerberg or Elon Musk or
Mm.
Satya Nadella, they always like they are in close touch, right? So I think we can see a similar thing happening in India with our prime minister like speaking to the top startup founders and the businessmen of the country and being in and actively promoting the startup culture in India with Make in India and a lot of these policies. So yeah, the startup culture in India is definitely seeing a boom, and we have great talent here. We have support from the government, so it's looking good. Yeah.
What is there anybody taking that latter train of thought in terms of building out a foundational model like DeepSeek? Anybody who I can follow on Twitter or anybody who you've heard of who's doing sort of building a sovereign AI for India?
So, yeah, of course, there are a couple of companies. I wouldn't say they're trying to achieve the state of the art benchmarks just
Yeah,
yet,
yeah.
something like DeepSeek did, or compete with OpenAI directly. But there are companies who are taking steps with that as the final goal, that we have to make state of the art models out of India. So there's Sarvam AI,
Say
which
that again.
is Sarvam AI.
Uh-huh.
So. Sarvam, Sarvam AI.
Hmm.
So that's one. Another is like Krutrim. It's Krutrim. It's started by the founder of Ola.
Hmm.
Ola is essentially Uber from India. So they have started something of their own, Krutrim AI. And then there's this I would say startup founder. He got his company acquired. His name is Paris Chopra, and he's very active in the Bangalore AI circle.
Hmm.
Um, he has been holding sort of cohort of just people who are interested or who are motivated by this technology of artificial intelligence to come and spend 2 weeks building together something in small cohorts. So he has started something. So he recently got his company acquired, Wingify. It
Hmm.
went for something like $200 million,
Hmm.
and he has started something called uh, Loss Funk, LOSSFUNK. So they are that's it's still very early, but knowing Paris personally, from I've never gotten a chance to interact with him, but I do follow him on social media, and we are on a couple of common WhatsApp groups. So knowing his passion for AI, it's something that to look forward to.
Hmm. Very cool. Well, thank you so much for coming on the show. Anything else you want to leave us with in terms of to prepare for the new layer of insecurity that has been built on the old layer of insecurity in terms of the internet?
Yeah, that's wonderfully put. So I would just say get your AI application red teamed, be aware about the vulnerabilities before taking things to production directly. Uh, Check out Repello. We can help you guys out in this, help you find and fix vulnerabilities in your AI applications. And yeah, just keep building.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Stuart, for having me.